Remember that we've combined the headlines with the sermon for this time of Lent, and we're reading from Hope from the Flowers by Trina Paulus. And we're all the way to chapter 2. Find it here. There we go. Okay. Once upon a time. Whoops. That's chapter 1. Let me go back here. Didn't move my marker. Okay. You remember that Stripe, the little caterpillar, had found this giant caterpillar pillar. And last week he dove into the pile. So now we're going to see what happens. The first moments on the pile were a shock. Stripe was pushed and kicked and stepped on from every direction. It was climb or be climbed. No more, and Stripe climbed. No more fellow caterpillars on Stripe's pile. They became only threats and obstacles, which he turned into steps and opportunities. This simple-minded approach really helped, and Stripe felt he was getting much higher. But some days, it seemed he could manage only to keep his place. It was especially then that an anxious shadow nagged at him inside. "What's at the top?" it whispered. "Where are we going?" On one exasperated day, Stripe couldn't stand it any longer and actually yelled back, "I don't know, but there's no time to think about it." And a little yellow caterpillar he was crawling over gasped, "What did you say?" "I was just talking to myself," Stripe mumbled. "It really isn't important. I was just wondering where we are going." "You know," Yellow said, "I was wondering that myself, but since there's no way to find out, I decided it wasn't important." She blushed at how silly this sounded, quickly adding, "No one else seems to worry about where we're going, so it must be good." But she blushed again. "How far are we from the top?" Stripe answered gravely, "Since we're not at the bottom and not at the top, we must be in the middle." "Oh," said Yellow, and they both began climbing again. But now Stripe had a new feeling. He felt bad. He'd lost his single-mindedness. How can I step on someone I just talked to? So Stripe avoided Yellow as much as possible. But one day, there she was, blocking the only way up. "Well, I guess it's you or me," he said, and stepped squarely on her head. Something in the way Yellow looked at him made him feel just awful about himself. Like, no matter what is up there, it just isn't worth it. Stripe crawled off Yellow and whispered, "I'm sorry." And Yellow began to cry. "I could stand this life hoping in what was ahead until I met you talking to yourself that day. Since then, my heart just hasn't been in it. But I don't know what to do." I didn't know how badly I felt about this life until then. Now, when you look at me so kindly, I know for sure I don't like this life. I just want to do something like crawl with you and nibble grass." Stripe's heart leapt inside. Everything looked different. The pillar made no sense at all. "I would like that too," he whispered. But this meant giving up the climb, a hard decision. Yellow dear, maybe we're close to the top. Maybe if we help each other, we can get there quickly. Maybe, she said. But they both knew this wasn't what they wanted most. Let's go down, Yellow said. Okay. And they stopped climbing. They clung to each other as masses of caterpillars crawled over them. The air was terrible, but they were happy with each other and made a big ball so nobody could step on their eyes and stomachs. They did nothing at all for what seemed like a long time. Suddenly, they didn't feel anything crawling over them. They unrolled and opened their eyes. They were at the side of the caterpillar pillar. Hi, Stripe, said Yellow. Hi, Yellow, said Stripe. And they crawled off into some fresh green grass to eat and take a nap. Just before they fell asleep, Stripe hugged Yellow. Being together like this is sure different from being crushed in that crowd. It sure is. She smiled and closed her eyes. And we will continue next week. Ah! It always happens, doesn't it? We get to that point. My friends, will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, my God, my strength, and my Redeemer. Amen. So today I want to talk about risks. I want to talk about walking toward danger. Our friend Stripe was climbing the caterpillar pillar. It's so fun to stay. It was scary, but he kept going. He was in danger of being stepped on or falling to the bottom of the pile, but he kept going. He didn't know where he was going, but he kept on anyway. It could have been dangerous at the top of the pillar, but he kept climbing. Stay away from Jerusalem, the Pharisees said. And Jesus just kept walking into danger. Jesus knew that he was heading toward his own death. He knew what was coming. And yet, he kept walking. Both Jesus and Stripe stepped out in faith. Both took a chance. We take chances every day. Every day. Sometimes, the chance is simple. We approach an intersection and we look both ways and trust that we will make it across the street safely. We buy a lottery ticket hoping to hit the big one. Maybe that's a big chance. We meet somebody we kind of like, and we take the chance of asking him or her out. We turn on the shower, and we trust that we will get warm, not hot, not cold, water. We take chances all the time. But some risks are more risky. Should you quit your job and apply for a new one? Is moving to a new state a good idea? Marry your partner of many years? Step in to stop the fight? These are difficult and risky decisions. And yet we also avoid risks. Sometimes we avoid things that are really dangerous, like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. Most of us would avoid that. That makes sense. And we probably should avoid such risks. But we often avoid things that are just mildly uncomfortable. Like meeting new people or going to the dentist. And sometimes there's no logical reason why we should feel uncomfortable at all. We just are. And as long as we can work through the issue, as long as we can work through the fear, we're okay. But sometimes that mild, uncomfortable feeling grows to the point where we can't meet new people, or our dental health deteriorates. Then we have to do something about it. Stripe met yellow and began to examine what he was doing. Was it right to climb, even if someone else got hurt? And Stripe and Yellow were following the crowd. It had become, for them, very uncomfortable. Even though climbing the caterpillar pillar took courage, they examined their urge to climb. And they made a decision. They took the chance to drop out, to go their own way. And that took more courage than climbing the caterpillar pillar. Sometimes we avoid taking a chance just because we've never done it before. We risk failure, but we also risk success. It takes courage to step out of our comfort zones. The caterpillar pillar was uncomfortable, but it was known. Stripe and Yellow needed to take the chance to be different. The chance to be who they were called to be. And maybe we are also called to take that chance and to do something we have never tried. Lent is a time to examine ourselves, to look at who we are, to look at how we act, and to work to change those behaviors. Maybe it's time to walk up to a stranger in a church and actually introduce ourselves to them, although most of you do that. Maybe it's time to make that dental appointment. Maybe it's time to volunteer to read in front of everybody on Sunday morning. Maybe it's something else, Maybe it's something completely different. No matter how big or small the change is, we have Jesus' example to follow. If Jesus could walk to Jerusalem, knowing what faced him there, surely we can face a fear. We can make a change. We can do something that just makes us uncomfortable. The psalmist says that God is our salvation, that God keeps us safe. Jesus knew that. Jesus took the ultimate chance. So we're called to follow Jesus' example. Let's begin to trust. Let's take some chances. Let's read on Sunday. Let's get out of the pillar and step out to do what we are called to do. Amen?
Amen.